Paul Willis takes a tour with the director of the gardens, Tim Entwistle, to find out just how their work contributes to our scientific heritage.
If you've ever been to Sydney, or if you live here, then you've probably come to this place, the Royal Botanic Gardens. It's a great place to come for a picnic or to see the amazing variety of exotic plants. It's also a good place to grab some solitude in a very busy city. Amazingly, there are over 45,000 living plants here, representing 9,000 different species. It's taken 200 years to establish these gardens, and like a museum, it's built on scientific collections. Before European settlement, the local Aboriginal inhabitants, the Gadigal, used the tidal area along Farm Cove as an initiation ground. Then, in early 1788, the area known as the Domain was set aside for Governor Phillip as his private reserve. A small grain farm was established there, but with limited success. Most crops failed due to the poor soil, being eaten by rats, and being planted out of season.
We look at the establishment of the gardens as being around about 1816. The first colonial botanist appointed to oversee the gardens was Charles Fraser.
There's been a long succession of colonial botanists ever since. The current New South Wales Government Botanist and Gardens Director is Dr. Tim Entwistle.
In the early days, around 1816, when the garden was started, we were bringing plants into the colony through the botanic gardens, acclimatising them, things like grasses, grapes, trees, but also collecting the fascinating flora of Australia, taking it back to Europe to put on display so they could see those plants.
Tim has worked as a scientist and senior manager in the Botanic Gardens for nearly 20 years and is the author of over 70 scientific publications.
In my PhD, I was studying freshwater algae, and I was studying their taxonomy, classification, discovering new species. This was really the first time anyone had looked at these organisms, the kind I was after, in Australia.
Wow. Tim is equally fascinated with a palm collection that started back in 1862. What have we got here?
Look, this is Pritchardia maydeniana. It's named after Joseph Maiden, one of the early directors of this botanic garden. And it's incredibly rare. And in fact, when it was planted here in the early 19th century, we thought we had the only collections in the world. It was thought to be extinct where it grew naturally.
And where's that?
It's in Hawaii, in the Hawaiian Islands, we think, and we weren't even sure of that. What's happened in the last 10 years is that there's been a revision done of Pritchardia, the palm genus, and they found some of the palms, misidentified, growing in Hawaii. So these now become part of a collection of palms. They're not the only ones in the world. So this is a really important collection.
The next collection reminds me of Jurassic Park. Well, this looks like a dinosaur's banquet.
And look, right in the middle, though, is the rock star of the Botanic Gardens. This is the Wallamai pine, discovered in 1994, only known to be 100 in the world today, but of course a tree that goes right back to the time of the dinosaurs.
And these have been successfully transplanted into horticulture, haven't they? It looks like every garden centre's got them now.
Look, it's a fantastic example of conservation and science working together. It's now growing all around the world. We've propagated, grown it up, done the science, worked out how to grow it, and the species will now not go extinct. The really sad thing would be if it went extinct in the wild where there's still only 100.
Wow, what a spectacular tree.
It is, isn't it? This one's called Chrysophyllum imperiale. Chrysophyllum because of that golden leaf colour, but imperiale, where you can see why. But also, fascinatingly, it was planted by Prince Alfred, being the son of Queen Victoria, planted in 1868. This was just after he'd recovered from being shot at, an assassination attempt across the other side of the harbour, came in, planted this imperial tree, and here we have it in its majesty in the Botanic Gardens.
An important part of the Sydney Botanic Gardens collection is the seed bank at Mount Annan, which contains about 10,000 samples of more than 4,000 species. The seed bank, which only opened in 1986, provides wild-collected seed for the development of new gardens. The National Herbarium of New South Wales is also part of the Royal Botanic Gardens. It's an amazing collection of 1.2 million plant specimens, dating back to the collections of Sir Joseph Banks on Cook's voyage to Botany Bay. This is the largest collection of the plants of New South Wales in the world.
We do a variety of plant sciences, but most of our people work on the problem of discovering new species and working out the evolutionary relationships between different kinds of plant species. I'm really interested in the relationships of Australia's plants and animals to those on other continents, and the family that I've worked on the most, the Proteaceae, is found right across the southern hemisphere.
With so much going on in the dynamic botanic gardens, it pays to keep an eye on the future. There's a big celebration not too far away. 2016, 200 years of the Botanic Gardens. Have you got anything special lined up?
Well, we've had contemplative science and beauty, if you like, for nearly 200 years here, and we don't want to lose any of that. What we want to do, though, is make the place greener, smarter, and change people's lives when they come into this botanic garden. So that's about making a more exciting place. It's also about doing more of the science that we're good at. For example, there's plenty out there still to discover. We only know 5% of the fungi that grow in Australia. Even on a eucalypt leaf like this, we've discovered 40 new species in the last decade. So there's plenty of work to do, plenty of stories to tell.
Is there a special take-home message for people who come to visit the gardens?
Well, plants are absolutely critical to our lives. Food, shelter, oxygen, storing carbon. So not only do we need plants, but they've got fascinating stories with them, and a critical part of that story is science.